Yes, yes. Welcome to the ancient world of tabletop games. I am Agamemnon from the historical documentary Time Bandits. This is a report from a fugitive. The first rule is to have fun. It's also the last word on the subject. There are game designers who put rulebooks together out of three basic ingredients: patches of skin flayed from the backs of zonked-out players, the tears of small children left to die in the cold as a means of separating the wheat from the chaff, and that devilish arcane symbol of atrocious game design, the square root. We must have no truck with those game designers, unless it's a truck we can run them over with. No one should ever have to calculate a square fucking root in a game. Here I must speak from experience and say that to the absolute worst of my recollection, I've played at least 3 games that called for the calculation of a square root. These were role-playing games. However did you guess? The most complex game you'll play is the role-playing game. Not thanks to the complex rules, and no thanks to endless, needless, pointless, meritless supplements sold to semi-suspecting gamers just to keep gaming companies afloat for one more calendar month. A bloated rule set is a dead rule set. No, even the simplest role-playing game has the capacity to be the most complex game you'll ever play, as the RPG involves the greatest degree of random interaction with your ever-increasingly random fellow players. Play involves a loose plot of sorts, presented by one player, the Game Master, Dungeon Master, Keeper of Arcane Lore, the Admin, the Referee, or whatever thematic term the rulebook chooses to call the Game Master. You create a larger-than-life persona and inhabit the game world as player characters, interacting with the environment, with events, and with a cast of thousands of non-player characters portrayed by the Game Master. Role-playing games would play much more smoothly if it weren't for the players. There's a saying in role-playing about the adventure running off the rails. After playing over 100 games, I've experienced enough to tell you that the adventure shouldn't really be on rails in the first place. The secret agent. The scent and smoke and sweat of a casino are nauseating at 3 a.m. Then the soul erosion produced by high gambling, a compost of greed and fear and nervous tension, becomes unbearable, and the senses awake and revolt from it. Casino Royale by Ian Fleming. This is a game that I picked up as part of a deal, a bundle of adventures to go with the RPG itself. You too could go on adventures in the world of Bond. James Bond. And I'm here to tell you this game started as a strange prospect. The adventures are hybrid creatures. Partly they are inspired by Ian Fleming's original stories, and partly they are inspired by bits and pieces of the movie adaptations. For reasons of the plot, though, just to keep players on their toes, the adventures also feature scenes and plot twists that are unique to the game, hence the health warning. Assuming this adventure is exactly like the movie can be dangerous to your character. The bundle was a good deal, if we managed to get value out of the game, if we followed the basic rule. Have fun. Players work for the government and go off on missions. Easy enough, then, to introduce characters to each other at the start. Each adventure caters to 3 experience levels. Characters are rookies, agents, or members of the 00 section. This places the game in unusual territory for an RPG. Dungeon bashing is a community effort. Investigating tentacular horror scales well with fewer players. But this espionage game does something outside the norm in RPG terms. It allows for a single, experienced character to run through the whole adventure much in the style of an action movie hero. Gaming is at its complex best with several players, however, and mostly I tackled these games with a full crew. Running single-player adventures is as rewarding as running multiplayer games. Though I must lay down the law here. Remember that the person running the game is also a player, albeit a player with a far different role. Yes, the GM is playing the game too. Most of these adventures came in a bundle, and they are of the clunky boxed format you don't see often now for reasons of cost. A few of the scenarios are booklets. This one was written by Raymond Benson, who went on to write a batch of authorized James Bond novels around the turn of the century. Was the game bundle a good deal of fun? I've run adventures that ran close to the plot line, whether I wrote those scenarios myself or used an off-the-shelf production, and I've run adventures that skidded off the beaten track into the dense undergrowth. But this game set an unbeaten record. Players veered off the adventure at every opportunity, in adventure after adventure, without fail. We didn't play a single one of these adventures even remotely as intended. Instead, players entered into the spirit of the game, of the setting, of the movies, and created their very own action film each time. In one mission, on a whim, the players decided they didn't trust a contact and started a shootout in a shopping complex that rapidly turned into an epic motorway chase. Somehow, the contact escaped to die another day, and players swept up the shattered pieces of the adventure, continuing play without skipping a beat. This could have been a disaster. It wasn't. We had a lot of fun. And that's the point of the RPG, creation of a shared narrative that's made up as you go along, though once it is all over, you look back on it and see a whole story that seems to make perfect sense, no matter how improbable the route to that movie finish and the end credits. It helped that the rules weren't mindlessly complex. If it happened in a Bond story, whether book or movie, was there a rule to cover the action in a game using a particular game mechanic? This view preserved the atmosphere players came looking for, even if the atmosphere wasn't always readily apparent. That one there, for example, Octopussy, was one I deliberately left until later. As with the movie series we started with Dr. No, players felt their way through that adventure and soon cottoned on to what the game system allowed them to do. On reading the Octopussy scenario, I felt there was little on the page to make the adventure work, not with my players. Paradoxically, all I had to do was rely on my players on the night, though. Instantly, they went right off the rails and created Bondian moments at every turn. It looked like one of the thinnest adventures in the series, but it played out like a meaty action movie, with players creating plot twists on top of the actual plot twists, all down to the players looking to experience that sort of adventure. And that made Octopussy one of the most memorable episodes in the series, ripe cheesy ending and all. RPG adventures live many lives. They don't only live twice. First, the adventure lives when written down. If it's a professional, off-the-shelf product, it lives again when the game master reads it. The adventure lives again when played, and it lives on in the memory of players, reminiscing much later. If it's a professional publication, it gains new life as players worldwide meet and discuss how they tackled the scenario. Differently is the short answer. Cheesily is an accurate reflection, with a smirk on the face pretending to be a character in a movie version of an RPG. As usual, there are a few game quotes scribbled in the margins. I can only provide the barest hint of the lunacy involved in random play. Why are you interested in Zorin? He's the bad guy. Did he get it? Oh, that'll be the poison soup then. Do I remember the winter that brought that? You must know the Clemenses, famous horse breeders. I think it'll be behind this picture. And it was. The name's Arson. Brian Arson. Leave your job now. That's a fine example of why you should have brick walls. Do you think he's one of the bad guys? He's the guy who shot me. And the classic line when a player realizes someone in the room is a villain. I see. Bang. If you are new to role-playing games, don't get caught up in the rules. The rule is to have fun, that's Rule 1. Yes, there's a rule too. Turn up, play the game. Don't obsess over doing everything at once. You are telling a story. Sometimes you lead the action, and at other times the action leads you down twists and turns you never thought of. Leave the game rules to the game master. Often that's the person who bought the game and read the rules. Everyone else gains a feel for the rules when creating characters, staring at the character sheet, absorbing a few game mechanics that way. Every RPG is daunting, and every RPG can be boiled down into its edible form. Take bite-sized chunks. Don't choke on the whole meal at once. Savour the atmosphere. Rule 1 is always to have fun. And Rule 2 should be first, I know. Just turn up and play the game, but Rule 1 beats it, and all the other rules. Every time.